Welcome to this video. My name's Barry Beckham and the subject here in layers is creative cut up. Now I think this is one of those things which is better demonstrated than explained. Now this technique is not entirely new. I think many of us have seen pictures that have been cut up and then put back together, perhaps not in exactly the same place where the cuts were made from, which is the basis of this particular technique. We need layers, but as you can see I've introduced some edge effects in the form of pieces of film, and I will include those so you can use them if you wish. Now it is a creative process, so we're all going to choose something different. I've got this image over a lighter version of the original background, but we could change it for a background that was completely solid. I think it rather depends on the individual and what our mood is at the time, but I think you get the idea about that. So let's make a start by opening up the original image. Now perhaps this is one of those times when we need to select the right type of image for this technique, but it's quite difficult to actually pin down what the right image is. It's one of those times when perhaps we'll know it when we see it. I'm going to start here by just removing the lock from the image from its background, because I could be increasing the size of the canvas a little bit later. But the first thing I want to do is to bring in one of those film edges and use that as a template from which to cut a piece of the image. So I'm going to get the 120 film edge and I'm going to drag it into our layered stack. Once that edge is on screen, I can put it in position. I'm going to want to rotate this a little bit, I think, so I'm going to hit the free transform tool shortcut of Control T, because I think this guy here I'll just rotate and try to get him something like that. As I said before, what we actually choose and how we choose it is going to be purely personal, but that doesn't look too bad. I think I'll keep his elbow in the shot there. I'm going to hit the enter key to commit that. Looking over at the layers, we've just got the film edge, of course, so if I select my magic wand I should be able to select what's in the center of that pretty easily. So I'm going to do that to make sure there's no risk of seeing any lines down the edge. I think what I'll do every time I make a selection inside a piece of film, before I cut it out, I'll just go to select, modify and expand that selection, probably no more than 5 or 6 pixels. I just want it to creep out a little bit so there's no chance of seeing any little lines around there. But before I actually make the cut, of course, I need to go back to my layers and select the image, because at the moment we'd be cutting away precious little. So I'm going to select my image and turn it back on and hit Control J. Now the two layers we're most interested in at the moment, of course, are the top two here. If I turn the bottom layer off just for a moment, we could keep both of these layers separate, but given that the cutout that I've made here is a part of the frame, what I'm going to do, I'm going to join them together. I'm going to merge them two together. It's going to make the layers a little bit more easy on our eye, and if we want another copy of that film edge for one of the other parts of the image, it's no problem to go and retrieve another copy. So to keep things nice and tidy, I'm going to select both of those layers, right click and choose to merge just those two. Now for the moment I'm just going to leave it in that position and decide what I'm going to choose next. Now it doesn't matter if I cross some of the edges here, and in fact that may actually help the appeal, but this is very much like putting together a montage, and as I'm fond of saying, there's lots of personal choice here. I think what I'll do with the guy on the right is to bring on screen another edge for the 120 film and drag it into our layered stack, and then we'll cut him out from within that to make the second part of the cut up. Well, there you can see the little angle that I've put onto the second piece, and I think that just encompasses the second guitarist nicely. So with the film edge on screen, I can select the magic wand, click into there, select, modify, expand. Our 6 pixels should remain, so it's quick to do, not forgetting to go back to the image because otherwise I've got precious little to cut from. Control J will give me my copy, and then if I drag it up the stack, I'll select these two, right click and merge the layers. So you can see we're up and running. Turning my background back on, I think I'll get a piece of 35mm film now and have a look at trying to pick up something from in the middle there. Well, you can see the position I've placed this in. I'm not sure I want it dead straight or not. I think what I may do is hit Control T to bring up the free transform tool. Just give that a little bit of a rotation. Hit the tick, pick up my magic wand, click into the middle of the film and do the same as I did before. Expand and then cut out from my main image at the bottom of the layered stack, and then we'll see how it's looking. Well, there you can see the images we've got so far, but we haven't actually moved any of these layers, and I think that's part and parcel of what we need to do. So now I'm going to select the biggest of the layers, the one at the bottom, and I'm going to drag it out just a little bit just to move it. I could break the edge of the screen if I wanted to, but I don't think that's absolutely necessary. I'm just going to go to the edge more or less. Let me pick up the one on the right. I'm going to move that a little bit, and don't forget we do have the opportunity, if we change our mind here, to hit the Control T and rotate these any angle we like. So as I said, it's very creative. And the final one, if we wanted to just bring that down a little bit or even rotate that again, because it's not until we see them all together that we can start to think how they're all going to work. But I quite like these being linked together with the corners, so I'll turn it a little bit but not too much. Let's say we bring this up just a little bit and hit the enter key. Nothing to stop us from making adjustments to these a little bit later on. And of course we've also got the opportunity a bit later, or even now as we go along, whichever you think is best, to change the stacking order. So if we need the 35mm film partially hidden by the larger parts, then of course we've got that opportunity. But we need to think about if we're going to cut out anything else. I'm going to use the long film strip next. I think it's got about 5 pieces of film within it. Same process, bring it onto screen, drag it into a layered stack. We'll select each of the 5 gaps in the film, expand, cut and merge. Well, you can see what I've done here. I've put this down the bottom, cut from the feet of the guitarist, but now I'm going to move it a little bit. I've got the free transform tool selected because I think we need a bit of rotation here as well. A little bit of an overlap of the other 2 shapes, and then I'll hit the tick to commit that. I'm still a little unsure whether this is one of those pieces of work where we need to remove what's left of the image before we actually proceed a little bit later or not, and or whether we cut out other bits around the edge. I think I may go ahead and cut out 1 or 2 others, but it's mainly how we're going to lay this out, whether we decide to lay it out on top of the image that it comes from or something completely different. Now you can see how far I've moved on here, but the techniques have been exactly the same from the very first cutout. The only thing I've done slightly different is I have put a piece of 35mm film over the top of the 120 film, and I cut out the face again, so I've actually got the face twice, although we can't see the face twice because I think that may be a little confusing. It does give me the opportunity to just, whoops, I've got the wrong one selected, this one here. It does give me the opportunity to move it up a little bit, perhaps just for creative reasons. Now I've turned the background layer off because I'm feeling just a little cramped in here at the moment. So I think what I'll do next is to create a little more space with my canvas, not too much. So let's go to Image, Canvas Size. I think I'm okay at the bottom, so I just want it maybe at the top left and right. Let's pick inches and put on the width, let's say 3 inches, and on the height 2 inches, and we'll see what that gives me. Control 0 fits the image back on screen, and there we can see it in its entirety. And of course what I can do is to select the top layer, hold the shift key and select the bottom layer, and then I could move all of these either with click, drag and drop or with the cursor control keys. The one part I'm not too keen on are these two on the left and the right, and as I said left and right, I went right and left, didn't I? I'm going to move this up a little bit, then I'm going to select the one on the right so I can just maybe move it out and down a little bit, and the one on the left, maybe I can move that out and up a little bit just for creative reasons. And I think this is one of those pieces of work where if we could have the patience to just put this away and save this as a layered file and come back tomorrow, I think it will probably help the creative process. Now, looking at my image like this without the background in place, the only thing that I think is a little bit unbalanced is the bottom left. Now I wonder if I can address that by just tilting that bottom strip of film. So if I select it from the layers here and hit Control T to bring up my free transform tool, maybe I can just rotate that and maybe even just move it a little bit, maybe a little more that way, and then hit Control 0, fit everything back on screen, and now start looking around the edge to see exactly what sort of position I want all of those pieces of film to be in. So once again, I'm going to select them all with that shift click, and I'm going to use my arrow keys just to nudge it one way or the other. We can be precise with this, as you now know, with the guides and whatever. Let's assume that we're more or less happy with that. I'm going to just make a couple of adjustments. I think I'll just select the guy here and just drop him down a little bit. I think I'll select this one here. Now I've got a bit more space and just drag that up a bit. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. But I'm not sure I'm going to use the background. It's not going to work, I don't think. So I'm going to use a plain background here. With the spinning round of the screen, I think you can probably work out exactly what I've done. I've created a charcoal background. I used a couple of colours from within the image. The reddy colour in here, you can see that over there, and the green. Put a gradient just around the edge in those two colours, but then subdued them quite a bit with the hue and saturation. Some noise in the background and a little bit of texture. So if we go in a bit closer, you can see the texture. And of course I've put a drop shadow around all of the pieces of film. Not sure if I like what I've got. I'd like to live with it at least overnight. I've also put a stroked line around the two main elements in the picture, but I'm not sure that's working. Even though I've only had it on there for a short time, I'm not sure that's adding anything to the image, so I may remove those. But there we have our creative cut up. Now, as you can see by the spinning round of the screen once again, that I've just brought back the original image, just stretched it to match the new size canvas, changed it to black and white and give it a degree of blur. And of course we can experiment with the levels here a little bit, just to see if we like this a little bit lighter in the background or darker. Went the wrong way, didn't I? Something like that, which makes the film stand out a little more. So there's lots of creative things we can do, and of course in my original little example I brought on screen, what I also did was to select each individual piece, and if we wanted to give them an individual color cast, we can do that with the hue and saturation. Control U will bring that on screen. If we tick the colorize box, you can see we can push up the saturation, select the color. So if we want that lad there to be blue but not quite that blue, we can pick the blue and then drop the saturation down. So we've got the opportunity to do something like this. You've just got to, I quite like that green actually, it works quite well, but I think I need that one to be the same. So 16525, let's see if I can copy that. Bring the hue and saturation back up. Well, it's done it automatically for me. I could, I suppose, think about making that one a bit lighter or darker. Well, I think you get the idea, and that it really is one of those creative things. So there we have the image that I've decided to live with for the moment, but of course I've not done what I suggested that you might want to do, which is to leave this and come back another day. I've done this all at one sitting, and it's very likely I could change my mind by tomorrow morning. But of course the important thing here is the techniques and the thought processes we use. But of course if we did this on another day, we'd choose different parts to cut out, maybe a different image to start with, and the result would be completely different. That's what's so much fun really about working in Photoshop's layers. Here I have another example of a similar cutout I did some time ago. But you can see that the techniques are very much the same. Started here though with a much bigger and bolder subject, and perhaps that's something to bear in mind when looking for a base image to start. And here, as you can see, we're using a very similar theme but presented, and again the techniques are exactly the same.